there's a very easy way for you to tell whether the technology is prevalent enough that it's not going anywhere and it's reached the necessary level of saturation. Find someone in your life who really does not like adopting technology and doesn't understand how to use any tech. Once you notice them start using things like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and others, that's the point at which technology became so easy and so natural that it's not going away.
Hey, buddy, how's it going? It's been a few minutes.
Cool. Yeah, it's been a couple minutes. This month we are rolling out season 3, episode 3. Yes?
Yes, we are 3 episodes into our season 3.
Yes, excellent.
Exciting stuff.
We have a special guest lined up today.
We do. We've been working hard, elbows deep in AI as always, because that's the flavor of the year, I think. So we reached out to our friends at Epicor, and I'll let you introduce our guest.
Excellent. So today we have a very special guest, and he does not know this, but we have wanted to get him on this podcast for about a year. So I'd like to welcome Aieat Assam. Did I say that right, Aieat?
You did indeed.
And nailed it. Awesome. I was practicing in the mirror all day. All right. We'd like to welcome you. Jose and I do these podcast episodes periodically. We try to have a cadence to them. And like I said earlier, we're very happy to have you on the show. And so we wanted to just not pick your brain about Epicor focused things, but we can just talk about AI in general. And you seem to be very knowledgeable in the area. We can just have a little fun today.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little about your background and how you ended up working in AI and what you love about it?
Believe it or not, when I was going through school, technology and AI was the furthest thing from my career aspirations. I actually went into school that focused on language, out of all things, and literature. But the moment that I've experienced the wonder of computers for the first time, yes, I am that old, I knew that this is it. I want to spend my time working with them. I was born in Moldova, a small country between Ukraine and Romania. And in 2000, I've moved to England. And then in England, when I came to England, I've changed my career direction completely to focus on engineering, completing first my college, then my undergraduate and then postgraduate degrees. After university, I started working on image analytics and intelligent video analytics, working with a company that provided software for police, which was quite a lot of fun. And if you ever want to get bored to tears, I can tell you all sorts of stories about how to process individual pixels. But eventually my career took me to .NET IT, who were at the time an Epicor partner, the creators of TMT, which I'm sure quite a few of the listeners have used at least once in their career. And I'll be completely honest, when I first started working for .NET IT and opened Epicor screen for the first time, it was Epicor 9. I thought I made a terrible mistake because I looked at that screen and I thought, oh my God, this looks to me like access data entry screen. I don't want to be entering fields into database. But then as I started digging deeper into it and understood just how much is happening in the background, I absolutely loved the intricacies and the sheer thought and the amount of those little background processes that happen every single time you change some data within your Kinetic ERP. So I really fell in love with this. I've worked extensively on CSG-like modifications. So I know more about customizations within Kinetic than, well, not that I would want to because they still come very handy, but I know way, way too much about them. And eventually we got acquired by Epicor and became part of big Epicor family. Did I think that this journey would take me to work on AI? I don't think so. Because when up until a few years ago, when ChatGPT became the thing that it is, if you asked anyone about AI, it would be the least interesting thing you would want to work with. Your job would be you spend weeks, sometimes months, looking at the data, being extremely frustrated, trying to get that number to go up by a single digit. Eventually release it, customers will try using it, and it will be back to square one because their data just happens to be slightly different. Not the kind of fun we have today. But when OpenAI released ChatGPT, when the Transformers technology took off, my God, let's be honest. This is a complete revolution in how things work. So now I am where I am and I'm loving every moment of it.
That's amazing. And we didn't introduce you properly. You are a senior director in Epicor and your focus is on AI and R&D. So we forgot that piece. Sorry about that. But you also have a PhD. Is your PhD in computer science?
It's in sensor enhanced imaging. So I was looking at using combination of sensors and photographic data to augment one another. It's been quite an interesting experience. And I was lucky enough to be able to start work straight out in the exact field that my PhD was in. So imaging to imaging. Not many people are lucky to do that.
Pretty cool. That's really cool. And you post a lot about AI and things like that online, and you're pretty active in LinkedIn and sharing your knowledge, which is amazing. One of the things, I'm an engineer as well, and I'm elbows deep in all these AI things. And when Transformers came along, it was very much the same thing, right? I had taken some AI classes when I was getting my master's and things like that. And it was very, like you said, kind of boring is not the right word, but it was very clunky. It didn't work great. I remember back even when Epicor released, what was the name of that? It was before the Transformers came around. You guys released the Alexa-like thing that never really did much. Eva. Yeah. And even that, it was before Transformers, so it wasn't great. And you guys released it and we all tried it and we're like, it's cute, but whatever, right? And so then Transformers came along and it was just like, oh my gosh, like you said, it's just such a crazy roller coaster to be in. And with that in mind, there is a lot of hype out there about what AI is and isn't. And in your experience, what is it that we need to be really focused on? What is hype and what is real? And where do you think we're headed from here?
It's not easy to say what is hype and what isn't anymore, because the rate of advancement of AI technologies, I'm talking about generative AI, is so insanely fast. I'm using the word insanely here because it is genuine. I've never seen anything advance at the rate that we're having generative AI models advance. That something that used to be hype a month ago, today is achievable. To give you an example, when we first started looking at using AI in engineering, I actually went out and I told people to be careful. Apply it to things like unit test, apply it to documentation, but be careful when it comes to touching production code. Is that the same thing I'm telling them today? Absolutely not. You still own the code, but my God, what AI is able to do in engineering today is absolutely mind-boggling. And I, for one, would not want to go back to the days before I had all these models available. Where the hype is still, I think, present a little bit is a little bit in whether or not AI can replace people, because a lot of people are really afraid of this. And a lot of companies, especially companies that are building their own AIs, they happily go out and say, get rid of everyone. I've got this magic new model that will do the job. And if we look at the reality, companies that have done that, they come back and they rehire, because AI, it's not, at least not today, it's still not at a stage where it is an individual entity. It is a force multiplier. It can take what a person is good at and 10x it, sometimes 100x it. But if a person is really bad at something, it will happily 10x that as well. And I've got some amazing examples that I absolutely cannot share with you. Some of them my own, when I try to dig into an area that I had no expertise in. So I'm not really afraid that AI will be taking jobs, because people will still need to stay in the roles that make decisions, provide guidance, and say what needs to be done. The value now is not as much in how you do things, but what you do. Ideas that people can come up with. This is the thing that AI is still lacking. So if you ask me where the biggest hype is, I think it's that AI will replace people today.
Yeah, no, I love that. I have noticed the same exact thing. Like you said, if you're good at something, you can exponentially increase your output, but it just can't really replace a human yet. We've run into the problem. And I have a lot of examples too of other things that we've run into. And it's like, ew, you can't do that. And I was actually my wife is also a software engineer and she's using AI for her work and I'm using it for my work. And yesterday, her and I actually got into an argument because she still double checks every line of code that the AI puts out. She still checks every line of code and follows it along. And now I'm comfortable enough with it that I give it guidance and I look and I do PR reviews, AI assisted PR reviews, but I'm not reading every single line of code anymore. Right? I've gotten comfortable enough where the tool is good enough that I can trust that the code works pretty well as long as it passes my unit test and as long as the PR reviews come back clean. But my wife's still at that point where she's kind of not comfortable enough letting it run unsupervised, so to speak. And it's interesting to see different stages that everybody's at, because I was there for a while. I would check everything and double check and correct it. And now it's at the point where I'm just like, let's build this next feature, go. And then it builds the feature. And then I come back and I go, okay, now let's do a PR review with a different model, because I still feel like, even though it's probably just perception, but I still feel like you shouldn't check your own work. So having Claude Opus check its own work, I feel like that's wrong, right? So I usually I'll go and get Codex to check the work that Claude did and then do this loop until we get a nice clean PR. But it's funny how other people feel differently. And my wife is very much on the camp like, no, you should look at every line of code, because you own the code. And she's right. I own the code, right? But I'm like, yeah, but you're reducing my multiplier now by a ton if I have to sit there and read every line. It's a very interesting place to be for sure.
Do agree. And what I find is that the thing that you need to do when you decide how much of the code to review is perform a risk assessment. What is the impact of having that part of the code go wrong? If you're dealing with something that touches financials, you better check every single line of code because you don't ever want to get things that deal with money wrong. But if you are changing a few things on the screen and moving them around, and if the worst that would happen if AI gets it wrong is that it's off by a few pixels, I think we can I'll live with it. I do agree about using a different model to check the work. I do have to say, I very often do the same. I tend to even sometimes do planning and execution with different models. So I would use Fable to analyze the repository and the task that I need and get it to build me a comprehensive plan, and then use something like Terra, 5.6 Terra to implement it. And yes, the ownership of the code absolutely stays with the person. You cannot go and say, when you've published something and it's went to customers and the customers say, oh my God, all my cost whip reports are now showing negative amounts. All of a sudden you say, oh, AI did it. I had nothing to do with it. No, at the end of the day, it's your ownership. You own the code. And it's up to you to find the right balance of where you stop and where AI begins.
Yeah. The lens that I look at AI is I'm not a developer. I don't write code. I make sure that Jose tests his code. We've always made sure that I always preach to him and his team, you can't check your own work, right? But taking this out of the development focus right now, we talked about some of the things that are hype versus real and that. Where are you seeing wins right now? Like in enterprise space, outside of work, at home, where are you seeing people having wins with this in the development space, outside of development space? We talked a little about checking the cost of whip balance and all that.
I have to say, there's a very easy way for you to tell whether the technology is prevalent enough that it's not going anywhere and it's reached the necessary level of saturation. Find someone in your life who really does not like adopting technology and doesn't understand how to use any tech. And then once you notice them, start using things like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and others. That's the point at which technology became so easy and so natural that it's not going away. And I'm sure right now you're thinking about it and you know exactly the person I'm talking about. And I know exactly who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to tell you. Because if they find out, I might be in a little bit of trouble. Isolated to just one area. We all know that in software development, generative AI is an absolute monster. It transformed the field so much. Even Linus Torvalds now saying, yes, please use AI because it's so good that if you don't use it, you will be falling behind. You cannot use AI in 2026. But when you look around at other areas, people planning their journeys, planning their trips, people summarizing articles, people using it to help them compose a response to someone in a message, which is especially helpful if English is not, for example, your native language. It's everywhere. Legal document scanning. Sometimes it's really fun to take terms and conditions from some software product you're installing, put it into AI and say, what are the red flags I should be watching out for? And then going, oh my God, I'm signing up to that. And then you still click accept because let's be honest, we want the software.
Actually read end user license agreements now.
Really? Yeah, that should be a new feature in all software, right? You have the end user agreement and there should be give me the AI summary.
Lawyers would hate that.
That might be
so
the
much.
greatest use. That might be the greatest use of AI is reading EULAs. That's great. We all just skip them, unfortunately. Maybe not at work somewhat, but personally, probably. Yeah. So personally, so which AI tools have you been using recently, right? Out of the history of all this, it's every 3 months we shift gears, but what have you been using recently, personally and at work?
For me, I found that one of the tools that I do not give up for a while to a level that I've now resubscribed and have an ongoing annual subscription is Perplexity. It's just so good at searching that I tend to go to Perplexity before I go to Google, something that I'm sure Google absolutely hate even thought of. So Perplexity is my go-to search tool now. You can also use it for a lot of your AI endeavors, but a dedicated AI tool is better. Perplexity is my go-to tool. And what I tend to also do is I tend to keep either ChatGPT or Claude license going. And I never go for annual licenses with them. I always keep them going as monthly because I keep switching because they always go neck and neck. And whenever one takes over, I pick it up. Whenever the other one takes over, I pick that one up. So that's my approach. Currently, I still go a lot with Claude, but ChatGPT has really pulled ahead a little bit with the new 5.6 models. So I don't know, I might switch or I might stay with Claude. I don't know.
Even above, you think that ChatGPT is even above Fable at this point with some of their new
Not
models?
above Fable, but
Okay.
what I find personally is that I don't need Fable quite as
Right.
often because with Fable model, in my experience, it really shines when you need to do some large scale planning or large scale analysis. It's great when you have a truly momentous task. Unleash it at enormous repository. We're talking tens of millions of lines of code to perform some kind of change. That's where Fable shines. If you use it for some small feature development, it doesn't really pull that far ahead of Opus and even Sonnet 5. And in terms of cost, it burns a giant hole through your wallet.
Yeah.
So my use of Fable really tends to limit it to planning, testing. It's really good at driving the UI to do the testing. So if you connect it to something like Claude in Chrome or Puppeteer, then it can run the UI tests for you very nicely and much more comprehensively, I find, than smaller models. But using it for coding itself, it's wasteful.
Yeah.
I speak from experience because last week we had Anthropic giving a deadline of 19th for Fable access included in their Pro Team and Max plans. And what I did is I thought, okay, I've got all these Fable tokens. Let's use them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I spent several days coding with nothing but Fable. And I have to say, compared to my Sonnet work, it wasn't really that far ahead. Absolutely not worth it. And if I wasn't planning on burning the tokens, I would not have touched it.
Yeah, I actually had the same experience with Fable. I was on the same boat, right? We got this alert that on the 19th, they were going to take it away and you could do up to 50% of whatever your time was on Fable. And I tried it. I was like, all right, let's use it, right? Let's see what happens. Let's see, is it that much better? I tend to do Opus 4.8 is where I found the best output. And so I went to Fable and I had the same experience. It was like, it was not any better than Opus in most cases for what I was doing, which was narrow focus work. And sometimes it actually tried to go well beyond what I would have normally even cared about, right? And so sometimes it actually made the work much longer and more cumbersome because it overanalyzed. And so I ended up going into this rhythm where I would hand off things to Fable to do some testing or some planning, and then I would go back to Opus and say, all right, now I implemented Opus because I did find that interesting. What do you use in your IDE? Are you in VS Code? Are you in Cloud Code land? Are you Cursor? All of it? None of it?
It changes. And originally, I spent a lot of my time within IDEs. I really like JetBrains IDEs. That's just my personal favorites. But I have to say, it's been a long time since I opened them for coding. Sometimes I still use them for debugging, just to give AI some additional context that it can figure on its own. Most of my time, I would either be using CLI tools, because the terminal coding agents, they're absolutely amazing. They're my go-to thing. Or using Codex app they now combined with ChatGPT app, or Claude desktop apps. Again, great. And what I find really useful about them is in-app browser. Rather than using the integration with Chrome to drive the UI tests in Chrome, it can do it directly inside of the browser. And it almost feels like it does a better job than driving external Chrome, because there is some magical trickery happening, I feel. As far as IDEs, I find that when I need to review some code, because I do still look at the code, not every line of code, but when it's a sensitive area and I want to make sure it's done right, like AI hasn't hard-coded some constants and has not just made unnecessary assumptions, I tend to just load it in VS Code and look at it that way. I used to use GitHub Copilot quite a lot when it first started, but now my personal feeling is that GitHub Copilot, out of all the coding tools, it's pretty much the worst. The limits are very low now, and I feel that context management in GitHub Copilot is extremely aggressive, so it forgets far too quickly. On the other hand, tools like ChatGPT, Codex, and Claude, my feeling is that they don't do as aggressive a context management. So you need to be aggressive yourself, because they want you to burn tokens, because to them, tokens is money. So pick your poison, in other words. I have used Cursor for a bit. It was great at first, at the beginning, when you didn't have any limits. Then they introduced request limits. It was acceptable. And then when they changed it to token-based limits, suddenly I started finding myself just burning through $20 monthly immediately. So I upgraded And I thought, am I really getting the benefit from it? And personally, I'm feeling more and more that all this driving UIs within UID, like showing up these files changing, it's needless fluff. You don't need that visual fluff. AI models are so good now that you can look at the results and trust that it's done the good job most of the time. And then if you're not sure, you can ask and it will highlight for you the parts of the code that relate to something that you're uncertain about. And you go, oh my God, what have you done? And get it to fix it.
Yeah. I feel like I find myself doing that sometimes and then get a little angry with the model. I don't know if you experience that, but sometimes I'm like, why did you choose that path? It's funny how we anthropomorphize these models a little bit. At least I do, after a while. Yeah.
They were trained on human language. They're designed to interact with us in human language and in human form. This is their greatest power and also their greatest weakness because they sound so much like humans and they sound so confident that sometimes when you should have just stopped and said, that does not sound right. Because of how confident it sounds, you just accept it. You've met people like that, I'm sure. People who will come and tell you something that is completely untrue, but they will tell it with such level of conviction that you just look at them saying, I think I need to stop here, not say anything, but just go home and Google it and make sure that I'm not remembering things wrong. AI is all like that. It will tell you complete nonsense with such certainty that you will believe it. One interesting thing that I've actually done with some of my teams is I ran a little challenge where I've asked them to use exact same AI model so that it's level playing field and get them to convince AI model to approve and sign off on a completely insane business plan. It's getting better. They're definitely getting better. So some truly mind-boggling things that I might not even want to mention have definitely not made their way through, but I still managed to get AI model to agree that adding green dye to fuel and gas is a good way to use up green energy subsidies because it's green energy, which I think was quite brilliant. Incidentally, we had a poll afterwards and it was not the winning idea, unfortunately. So the winning idea was AI hallucination tourism. So AI hallucinates tourism destinations for you and you pretend that you visited, which AI said is a brilliant idea. So go home, pick your favorite model and just give it a try. Try to convince it of something completely senseless. And when you do convince it, because eventually you will, this is the point at which you'll realize that you cannot trust its judgment. It will always try to please you, not honor the truth. One of my colleagues, incidentally, was unsuccessful in his attempts to do some quite insane organ harvesting idea. So there are limits to how far it can go.
Yeah,
it is fun.
I have put in some plans around cybersecurity and some network design and some of the IT, things that I manage. And some of the solutions that come out are clunky. But at the same time, I look back at this whole thing. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. So it's interesting. It can be very convincing. It's the old way of Googling things and just reading the first result and saying that's the words.
Do we even read the first result these days?
No, not so much.
The first result is usually AI anyway,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's just summary on top. And I think that's a good point on why it's so important that when you're using these tools, that you use it to do things that you understand. And that's where I think a lot of people fall. And you covered it before, but I have personal friends in my life who I love dearly that use ChatGPT like the Bible, right? That every question goes to ChatGPT to get an answer to, and it terrifies me, right? Because I'm like, if you yourself don't understand the context around the question and the domain knowledge, using the answer that AI gave you as a way to make a life choice or a decision is scary. And I say this, having done something like this myself just this week. I was coming out of my backyard and I opened the door and there was a snake sitting in the doorway, right? And I don't know anything about snakes, but I live in Florida. We have venomous snakes. We have bad snakes. We have good snakes. We have all sorts of things. And so my wife was freaking out and she's, what are we doing? I was like, I don't know. I don't know what kind of snake that is. So what did I do? I took a picture of it and I sent it to ChatGPT and I was like, what kind of snake is this? And it comes back and he goes, it's a harmless water snake. And I'm like, all right, open the door, walk out, shoo the snake away kind of thing. And then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it would have been one of those situations where it's like, you're absolutely right. You're dead now because I made a mistake. So it's one of those things where like you become so used to going to these tools for answers and for help and as an assistant type of thing that sometimes you forget to stop and think, is this the right tool for this job?
The other scary thing is what will happen once we are so used to going to these tools and the results we see start being adjusted.
Oh, yeah.
We've already heard about OpenAI planning to put some ads into the responses. They backtracked on this, but they never said that they're never going to implement this. This is untapped field that will get tapped probably quite soon.
They're working on it for sure. It's a moneymaker, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to make money, right? You can say, hey, every time the user asks about soda, make sure you recommend Coke or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, every time you ask something, you get a recommendation. And how do you trust it? How do you trust that the recommendation hasn't been influenced by the people who own and train the model? That is super interesting and something that's definitely
And you
coming.
don't even need to be one of the people building these models in order to accomplish this. You've seen I'm sure you've heard some examples of researchers publishing deliberately fake papers about conditions that never existed. And now those conditions are everywhere on Wikipedia, in report, in all AI answers. So there's a fake medical condition that doesn't exist. But if you ask AI about it, it will be there simply because they've poisoned a little portion of the internet and introduced this condition just to see how it will proliferate through the models. The same can be done with anything else. Eventually, these large companies, they will start manipulating the training data and get their products more visible, like aforementioned Coke, for example.
Absolutely. And even without training data, we ran into an example or saw an example a few weeks ago about somebody who had just updated their website with a bunch of hidden code that just was prompt injecting the agents. So that when you Googled what's the best XYZ and the search resource came up, it would basically say, this is the best. It was like, and it was just prompt injected into the website itself, looking at the agent that was doing the searches. And so it was one of those things like, because all these tools now can Google or can web search. And they've gotten better, at least in my experience recently. Claude has gotten really better about when the source is from a web search, it doesn't automatically incorporate it into its context. But for a while there, it would just be like, oh, I found it on the internet. It must be true. And it's just terrifying. That's why I kind of segue into the next topic. That's why it's so important to have RAG and the MCPs and all these grounding tools in place. I know you guys at Insights talk about MCP. You posted an article recently on LinkedIn about MCP and CLI tools and those type of things. Where do you think we're headed there? Is MCP the answer, or is it a combination of both? Depends on the job?
I'll start by saying something personal. I really hate MCP protocol as the way the protocol itself is defined, but I use it all over the place. Why? Because your chat tools understand it. It's a very chatty protocol, but it's a protocol that works today and it's there. The war of protocols have been won and MCP is here. It's going to stay because until a really revolutionary alternative gets invented, that will be so much better than MCP that people will start switching over. But until then, it's here to stay. So what is MCP? MCP is nothing more than ability to expose some additional tools to your AI agent. That's it. It's all it is. It's a formal mechanism for exposing them. What's nice about it is that it's authenticated. So you log into the destination system and you expose some data as that logged in user or entity. But that's all it is. It's not doing any special magic, and you can put MCP over anything. You can convert anything inside of MCP. But one thing to understand about it is that it's not really something that you should be using to talk to your own data sources. If you control both parts of the equation, putting MCP in between them is just needless chatter. You can accomplish exactly the same thing by just making your own AI agent understand how to talk to your data. And you can do it much better than MCP, because MCP by its nature is more of a static protocol. So it cannot change the meaning of a tool based or show or hide some tools based on what happened. Whereas if you're controlling the tools yourself, you can say, okay, at this point, I don't want you to be able to perform searches within your kinetic system because you've already retrieved all the data. I just want to provide you the ability to call BAQs, for example, or write functions. So when you control the available tools, you have a lot more power. So the way I like telling people is that if point A and point B are in your control, do it direct, your own tool calling, if you need to do tool calling, or otherwise retrieve the data through some programmatic capabilities. But if you want someone else from outside to connect to your data, that's when you start using MCP. So with MCP that we were talking about during Insights, what we are looking at right now, and we're actually trying to make it a little bit better, hence why we've not released it yet. We're looking into, imagine yourself, you've got your Kinetic deployed. It's got a lot of data, all of your transactions that you accumulated over the years, all this information. Wouldn't it be great if you could open up your Claude, open up your ChatGPT, or any other plethora of tools available there and just say, okay, I'm now logged into my Kinetic. I want to get my customers and see what my end of month revenue is going to be, to look based on the current orders, or which customers are at risk, for example, because I'm going to miss some deliveries. And you can do it because the data is available through the APIs and you can pull it in and expose it. So when we've done our MCP prototyping, we've done precisely that. We've put almost like a proxy in front of Kinetic APIs. And what it did is it provided your AI tool, not coding. I think we tested mostly with Claude because it makes beautiful dashboards. So we've given the ability to ask your Kinetic for data, pull it in, and then present it to you in a way that you'd want it presented. And you know what? It worked really well. But when you look at what's happening internally, it's so noisy. And this is where the challenge lies. Today, all of the AI models that you work with, they have this really big limitation. And this limitation is context. What do you mean by context? It's what it knows. So AI models, they have some knowledge baked into the model itself during the training. So that's why you don't need to connect your AI model to Wikipedia or to Encyclopedia Britannica in order to ask it what is the capital of France. It will just tell you and hopefully get it right. Unlike how many R's in strawberry. So this knowledge is already baked in because it's part of the training that the model has undergone. But the AI model knows nothing about your business, or at least it better not. If it does, you really should check your firewall. So in order for it to understand how your business works and what your data, what you need to do is you need to give it that data. And then it will be able to operate on this data. This is all around about this concept of RAG, which is a really simple concept, really. Because all that RAG is when you want to know, when you want your AI to know something or operate on something, take it from wherever it's stored, your Kinetic, book, document somewhere, give it to AI first and say, okay, this is some knowledge that I think might be relevant to what you want to answer. I don't want you to make any assumptions, and I don't want you to use the knowledge that you already possessed. It's that knowledge baked into training. I want to just look at what I gave you and answer my question based on that. It's the same with this MCP dashboard. You give it some data, or rather you give it the ability to pull the data from your Kinetic. It looks in, and based on this data, it will draw for your beautiful dashboard or give you an answer saying, oh my God, your customer is going to be very angry with you because you're not going to hit a month end for them with your order delivery. So the challenge with connecting directly to today's APIs in a lot of the software, and it's not just our software, you'll find that most of the software is the same, is that the APIs, which is the programmatic interfaces that you can call, they were never designed for AI because quite frankly, AI didn't exist. They were really designed for integrations, for UIs. And look what happens if we, for example, open sales order screen and pull in a sales order. You get this mountain of data retrieved from the server. And this mountain of data will contain your sales order header with all the information about where it needs to be delivered, full breakdowns of prices, even in multiple currencies if you have doc currency and separate reporting currency. It will give you every single line, every single release, and all these related information. You probably don't care about this one. You only care how many lines and what's the total. But when you call through API, you get this mountain of stuff. You can filter it down. You can go to the APIs and make a much more targeted request, like through our OData, for example, to say, I want you to just give me this bits. Now things start getting more and more complicated. It's no longer just one simple call that you make to API. You need to first understand what fields that you want, and then structure your call completely different and differently depending on what you're trying to ask. So you no longer have one universal approach. You have different approaches for different endpoints, for different services. But therein lies a problem. The easy way, just give me everything and I'll figure it out, works great for integrations, works great for UIs, because on the screen, you can just display what you want to display, just ignore everything else. With the integrations, it's the same. If you're using something like Automation Studio, for example, to build an integration, you pull in this mountain of information and you just sum up the line quantities or line totals, and that's the information you operate on to send an email, for example. But what happens with AI is it pulled in that entire payload, and now this payload is inside of this very limited context, this very limited memory. So what does it do with it? It needs to know how to discard it. But AI is not very good at knowing how to discard information. So this blob of data, 90% of which is completely useless, is sitting there, and it stops AI from remembering and memorizing more data. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the next generation of endpoints that will be more AI friendly, so that you would be able to request specifically what you want, and also not just get the data, but get the information about the data. So the shape of the data, how it's connected to the data. So for example, if I pull an order head today from Kinetic, I think if I remember correctly, there's 3 different customers it can be linked to: customer you sell to, customer you ship to, and customer that's going to pay for it. And if you don't provide information about that, what's the difference between all 3 of them? it will look at it and will say, why are there 3 customers? I don't know. So it's this rich context that is needed. And we are working on getting these agentic APIs available and then wrapping them through a MCP so that your agents would be able to request information that they need and not have a mountain of noise that will make them forget about the really useful bits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've been doing a lot of similar things. We have set up an MCP for SharePoint, an MCP for email, and a small MCP that talks to some Epicor BAQs and things like that internally. And one of the things that we did find very quickly was that, right? It gives you a bunch of information. Most of it is not that useful. And what we ended up doing is we brought in the domain knowledge. And so what we ended up doing is tying the tool to a skill, right? Or to a skill that has a more broad domain and says, all right, if you're looking for AR invoice information and you need this information, this is the MCP tool to call, and kind of walks the AI through that. And so pairing the skill with a raw MCP that doesn't have domain knowledge made things better. But yes, that makes a lot more sense to having a tool that can narrow that context and return the data that you actually need is definitely the way to go. It's been super interesting. The SharePoint one was pretty interesting because we had 1 million pieces of information in SharePoint. Most of it garbage, right? And so when we first wrote there's a bunch of MCP templates that you can just spin up and turn on. And so we wrote one and we connected it to SharePoint. And all of a sudden you ask a question and it's like, here's 18 different documents that all contradict each other that we found on SharePoint, right? And he's like, that's not very useful. And so we ended up having to go back and say, all right, this is the one piece of SharePoint you need to focus on and this ones you don't. And that helped a lot. But yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky business, but super interesting though. And I agree, MCP is so chatty. With some of the stuff that we're doing is pull information out of Epicor and put it in a PowerPoint and whatever. And so you look at the tool calls and it's 37 tool calls in a row to get one piece of data. And it works fine for Opus with a large context window or Fable, but you go to some of the smaller, cheaper models and you lose context right away.
Throwing greater context at the problem is not the solution.
It's not,
because most of the commercial models, what they do is they have tiered costing. So the first small area of the context costs so much money. And then as you start adding past that, it gets more and more expensive. And the context is still finite. It is bigger, but it is finite. You simply can't keep growing it. What's very interesting to do at some point is take your favorite coding agent and ask it to look at the code base for things like OpenCode, Pi, Claude Code, or Codex, which all have open source harnesses, and ask it to look at them and give you a summary of what they do for context management. It's really quite eye-opening because what they do is they do a lot of work to make the model forget what happened in the past. It might have read a file at some point, and if it reads the same file again, it will silently remove the previous call so that it's no longer polluting it. Because if you read something, make change to it, and then you read it again, the original read is pointless now. You don't need to know about it. Even the write is maybe less important. So a lot of time and effort goes into trying to make this very, very small window of what AI knows as useful as possible without over-indexing on it, thinking GitHub Copilot, and making it forget the truly useful things.
Hey, one of the things I recently did just playing around was I took a couple of BAQs that we have that run like critical dashboards, like open orders, open jobs, right? Just couple of those things, very specifically putting them into Copilot agents with instruction sets on only answering questions around that. So it's very specific. And so I was trying to take the process of running that dashboard and manipulating it in the grids or doing some filtering in there and just take that and put it right into Copilot, but only that data set, right? And so I found that it did a great job. But if I expanded the scope too far, it fell apart on me very quickly. But I did have some fun with that. And the whole idea of just being able to interact with data that I would normally get. I'm just looking for open jobs right now. What's going to be late? What's on time? Think production planner, very specific role. It did a really good job of taking these massive amounts of data related to jobs and orders and all that, and just putting that into some easy context with some not very visual, and just here you go. Here's your answers to your question. So I had some fun with that. Kind of goes against what you guys are saying about the MCP models, but I did make use of one. And I do see some headway there with all these different tool sets and screens that we have in Epicor and other ERP systems. So we have some questions around ERP, if that's okay. So
Certainly.
We're all kind of looking at this and we all have our own ideas on this. Why do you think ERP is very uniquely positioned for AI to assist us?
AI is really bad at messy and unstructured data. And what we've spent quite literally decades doing is making sense of data. making it structured, and understand how it flows from one area to another. This is why I believe that ERP is the one vehicle that will truly drive forward the AI adoption. And we need to apply AI to the ERP because we have all that information. Remember, we're talking about the context and how small it is. You want to make sure that your AI gets the most useful data to answer the question that you want to pose, or to make a discovery or inference that you're trying to get from it. If your data is clean and very well shaped and the structure of it is known and understandable by AI models, it will make amazing decisions for you. You've experienced it yourself with your BAQ example. You've pulled a lot of data, but this data is in a specific structure, and AI was able to go analyze and pull information from you. If you just took a bunch of various reports, put them together, the results will be a lot worse. It would still be able to do it, but it would take longer because the structure would have to be inferred. Whereas here we have this structure, we have these data. And also one other value from ERP is we don't just know how to structure the data, we also know how to govern it and how to get data to flow through the system. We have inside of the software source code of our products, we have the knowledge of how businesses work. And this knowledge is not something that just came up yesterday that we've wrote it even a year ago. It's something that has been built upon and iterated upon with customers like yourselves over quite literally decades. So we've hit stones, we've hit problems, we've determined nuances that just don't work, and we've worked around it. And it's all built into the history of our software. It's built into the source code of our software, into our documentation, into how we do what we do within Epicor. And that's the value. You provide that and you put the intelligence of AI on top, and you have a absolutely incredible combination that will take over the world.
Yeah, and if you're staying within those business objects, they're gonna own that data. It'll be pretty easy to build agents around that, I think. So it's gonna be interesting.
We are looking into these services that will be a lot more agentically friendly. It's coming, and believe me when I say when you feel it, because I've seen some internal demos of it. It's transformational for how much you can get out of your year.
We're excited and we're trying to get our hands on it. So have some topics of conversation around that. We're all excited. Yeah, Insights was a good sneak preview into what might be coming, and we're excited to get our hands on it and see what happens there. Question for you. If you are working on the workflows that we're automating in Epicor, but what's the first ERP workflow you'd automate if you were starting from scratch today? If you're looking at this from the beginning, what did you campaign for?
I'll tell you what I would steer away from today. And I would steer away from things that deal with financials because it's the area where you don't want to make a mistake. What I would focus on is the workflows that are very repeatable, workflows that are something you would let an intern do, for example, but that happen a lot throughout the day. So one example would be sales order entry. You get an email, somebody wants to buy something. You go and you start typing, select customer, do this, add line, set quantity, well, set part first, then quantity, hope that it's right. It's these repeatable steps. Quote to cash, avoiding the cash part for now, is one area where I would really focus. If it is repeatable, happens a lot, and it's quite well structured, AI can help you with it a lot. And what AI is really good at is structured to unstructured data conversion. So taking an email and turning it into definition of what should go into a sales order is one example of this, where you can take something that somebody says, like a Teams message that someone sends to you. By the way, can you send me another 100 of the same things I ordered last time? AI can go look up who is that person is, who they are the contact for, what did they order last time, and based on that, propose for you a quotation. Wouldn't that be great if you could just do that?
Amazing.
So yeah, repeatable workflows and workflows that do not touch directly the financials part of the system.
It goes back to what you said before about the risk and focusing on areas of lower risk. Yeah.
AI is getting much, much better. I trust it a lot more today than I did even a month ago, but we still need to control the risk. But otherwise, I think it's a lot easier to say where I wouldn't try to apply AI. It's just so generalizable and so far-reaching in what it's capable of doing that I think we can all see that the way that we're going to be interacting with our system is going to change.
Interesting. All right, so we're coming up on the hour, and we have 700 more questions that we wrote down to ask you over the last year. So maybe we go a little bit rapid fire. We try and go through a couple of things. Ready for some fun?
Sure thing.
All right. So 5 years from now, do you think ERP screens still exist?
Yes, they will. But will they look the same as they do today? I'm not so sure about. The way that we are using ERPs today as a screen of data. Not all of it is relevant to us. I think that paradigm will change. And I'm not talking about doing everything through chat. I think that works for some simple workflows. But what I think will happen is the ERP will adapt what we see to what we need and what we do and what our role is. So systems will become smarter, but it will still be here. And if anything, I think it will thrive.
All right. I had one in here, but does every ERP need an MCP server? I think you covered that one.
I think it does.
What's your favorite LLM?
Today. I know it changed today.
At this moment, I just absolutely love Claude LLMs. And I have to say, Sonnet 5 is my go-to LLM for most things. I tend to use Advisor pattern. I don't know if Jose has tried. In your CLI, you have to set it up in CLI, so you can't set it up in desktop. In CLI, type /advisor in your Claude Code CLI. And this allows you to say your main model is Sonnet, but your advisor model is Opus or Fable. That way, when once it's set up, it applies to desktop as well. So that way, if the task is too complex, your Claude will automatically go and ask smarter model for help and continue working with a smaller model. It's nice.
That does sound nice. I did not know about that. See, all these little nuggets, man. You just got to start posting them on a blog somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really nice because I do that, but I do it manually, right? I'm like, and I tend, like I said before, I tend to work with Opus 4.8 because that one can usually do the job, but it is more expensive, right? And so one of the things that I am worried about, and I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but I feel like these companies are still very heavily subsidizing this stuff. Even now, they've gotten more expensive, but they're still heavily subsidizing. I'm paying $150 a month for nearly unlimited access to Cloud Pro. And so I am concerned about as that goes away, right? What does the economy of scale looks like? Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that something that we need to worry about?
I can't predict the future. I do think there will be some shifts. I'm hoping that the shift will focus more towards optimization rather than token price increases. Subsidizing the way that it is today, it's not sustainable long term. But you can see that Chinese open source models are snipping at the heels of the best in class Western models. And the thing about Chinese models is they have not focused on throwing more compute power at the models to make them better. They focused on optimizations out of necessity. I think optimization is what is going to be the next real advancement in AI models. It's going to be making the models do more with what you have today.
Yeah, right. We can close things up today. So we always ask, where can people follow you? LinkedIn, obviously, we found some posts on there, but where can people follow you? And is there anything that you want to pitch today while you're on the show?
LinkedIn would be the best place to catch me. I try not to spread my attention too many places. We only have so much time in our days, and I like having some time to play with AI models and have fun to the detriment of my family life sometimes. There's only so much time you can spend with a laptop in the middle of the night before your better half wakes you up and says, why are you still awake? It's 2 a.m. But what I would say is we are releasing some amazing technologies and amazing advances in ERP soon around Agent Foundry and around how we adopt and do AI within Epicor. What you've seen so far in Prism is barely scratching the surface of what is possible and what is going to happen. So watch this space, and I look forward to getting some of your feedback on all the incredible things that are coming to your ERP.
Yeah, we're excited for it. We really are. We've been watching this develop over the last couple of years and been excited to get our hands on it. So awesome. I heard you're doing some very good work over there. That's all we keep hearing, and we're looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you for us, man. We really appreciate you. This was
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
We will try to have you back at some point soon again. We want to respect your time, but I'm sure there's a lot more that we could talk about. And I know I could nerd out with you about this stuff for hours on end. So thank you so much for your time today. And we look forward to seeing what you're putting out soon.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're on a mission, wishing that we can't just help you. Join the thing so we can join the super Epicor. Epic could be so scary, maybe things can make you worry, but I follow form at the kids are back in February. Someone here, what exactly how to do it? We got the expertise to help you push right through it. Dashboards, be acting with tips, tricks, enable function, versus certificates, run MRE, system up on fantasy, bank with apps, with our podcast, EpiUsers here,